My sister reported me to Child Protective Services 2 weeks before her wedding. She told them I was unstable, unprepared, and unfit to be a mother. She did it with a smile on her face and a bridal magazine in her hand, and she almost got away with it. Let me take you back to the beginning, because none of this makes sense without the before. I was 36 years old when my husband Marcus and I started the adoption process. We had been trying to build a family for 4 years before that. 4 years of fertility clinics, of hope and paperwork, and hope again, and then grief. I will not spend too long on that part, because this story is not about loss. It is about what happened after we chose a different path forward, and who decided that path needed to be blocked. The adoption agency we worked with was called Sunrise Family Services. Small, licensed, reputable. Our caseworker was a woman named Diane, who wore reading glasses on a beaded chain and always had a thermos of green tea on her desk. From the first meeting, Diane told us the process would be long, emotionally demanding, and worth it. She was right on all 3 counts. We had been working with her for 14 months when everything started to fall apart. It was a Tuesday in October when I got the call. I remember because I was standing in our kitchen making coffee, the early light coming through the window at that particular angle it only does in autumn, the kind of light that makes everything look like a photograph. Marcus had already left for work. I had the day off. I was in the middle of thinking about nothing more complicated than whether we needed more oat milk when my phone rang. It was Diane. Her voice was careful in a way it had never been before. "I need to ask you to come in this week," she said. "There has been a concern raised." I put the coffee mug down. "What kind of concern?" A pause. "An anonymous report was submitted to the Regional Child Welfare Office. It raises questions about your home, environment, and your emotional stability. We are required by law to investigate." I stood very still in my kitchen. The coffee maker beeped. I said, "Okay, when can we meet?" "I want you to understand something about that moment." I did not cry. I did not scream. I felt something cold move through me. But it was not panic. It was recognition. Because even before Diane finished explaining the nature of the report, some part of me already knew. Not who, not yet. But something in the shape of the situation, in the timing, in the specific cruelty of it, felt familiar. The report claimed that I had a history of emotional instability, that I had struggled with depression severe enough to require hospitalization, that our home was often chaotic, and that Marcus and I had a volatile relationship. None of it was true, not a single word. But anonymous reports carry weight in adoption proceedings. They have to. The system cannot afford to ignore them. And whoever filed this one knew exactly what they were doing. I drove to the Sunrise offices on Thursday morning. Marcus came with me. Diane sat across from us with a printed summary of the report and the expression of someone who is professionally required to take something seriously that she personally finds troubling. "I want to be transparent with you," she said. "This report is vague in some areas, but specific in others. The specificity is what requires us to act. The specific parts. Someone had mentioned dates, not exact dates, but references to incidents that sounded like they could be real. A period 2 years ago when I had supposedly withdrawn from family contact. A time when Marcus and I had reportedly argued loudly enough for neighbours to be concerned. A suggestion that I had seen a therapist for serious mental health concerns. I had seen a therapist. I still did, once a month. For grief processing after our fertility journey. My therapist, whose name is Dr. Aurora, had already written a letter of support for our adoption file. It was sitting in the folder in Diane's office, right alongside the anonymous report. I looked at the summary. I looked at Diane. I said, "I would like to know the submission date and the method of submission." Diane hesitated. "That information is technically part of the investigation file. I can tell you the report was submitted through the online portal." "And the date?" she checked. September 28th. September 28th. I filed that date away like a key into a pocket. I drove home and I sat in the car for a few minutes before going inside. Marcus was already on the phone with our family lawyer. I watched him through the windshield, pacing the living room, and I thought about September 28th. My sister Lena had texted me on September 28th. I remembered because it was an unusual text. She had asked, out of nowhere, whether Marcus and I had decided on a timeline for the adoption. She had asked it in a way that felt like she was checking something off a list. I had told her we were in the final stages of the home study. She had replied with a heart emoji. A heart emoji. I want to tell you about Lena, because you need to understand who she is before you can understand what she did. Lena is 3 years younger than me. She's the kind of beautiful that people describe as effortless, which is ironic because she works very hard at it. Growing up, she was the one who got the attention. Not because my parents loved her more, but because Lena has always known how to position herself at the center of any room. She is charming and funny and generous in public and complicated in private. I say this not to be cruel, but because it is accurate. We were close in the way sisters sometimes are, when one of them is always slightly competing and the other one does not realize it for a long time. In August, Lena had announced her engagement to a man named Theo. The wedding was scheduled for November 12th. The engagement had consumed the family in the way Lena's events always did, which was completely. My mother called me 3 times a week to discuss venues. My aunt flew in for the engagement party. The adoption, which had been the main family conversation for over a year, quietly moved to the background. I had not minded. I was genuinely happy for Lena. I had sent her a gift. I had agreed to be a bridesmaid. I had gone to the engagement party and smiled in every photograph. But somewhere in the weeks after the announcement, I had started to feel the shift. The way my mother's questions about the adoption became shorter, more distracted. The way Lena would redirect conversations. The way family dinners began to feel like pre-wedding planning sessions, with a small adoption update squeezed in at the end, like a footnote. And then there was the bridal appointment. Lena had asked me to come with her and my mother and our aunt to the bridal boutique in mid-October. 3 weeks after the anonymous report was filed, I went. Of course I went. I sat in the cream-coloured chair and I watched Lena try on dress after dress, and I smiled, and I held the champagne I was not drinking, and I was fine. Until Lena was standing on the fitting platform in the 4th dress, a structured gown with a long train, and our aunt asked about the adoption. Just a casual question. How was it going for her sister? Lena tilted her head. She looked at herself in the mirror. And she said, in a voice that was almost gentle, I just think some people are made for motherhood, and some people are not. It is not a judgment. It is just reality. She said it to the mirror. She did not look at me. My aunt made a small, uncomfortable sound. My mother pretended to study the fabric of the dress. I took a sip of my champagne and said nothing. Nothing. Because I had already started to understand what I was dealing with. I went home that evening and I opened my phone and I went back through 2 years of messages between Lena and me. I was looking for something I could not have named precisely, but I was looking. And what I found was a pattern. Every significant moment in my life over the past 4 years had been followed within days by Lena announcing or escalating something of her own. When Marcus and I shared the news about starting fertility treatments, Lena announced a promotion at work that same week. When we told the family about our decision to pursue adoption, Lena started talking about Theo almost immediately after, even though they had been together for 2 years by then, and the relationship had never been mentioned at family events as serious. When we submitted our adoption application, and Diane sent us the confirmation letter, which I had shared with my mother in a group chat, Lena got engaged within the month. I am not saying the engagement was fake. I am not saying Lena does not love Theo. I am saying that the timing was not coincidental, and I'd been too charitable for too long to see it clearly. I saved everything. I screenshotted the chat history. I noted the dates. I created a simple document on my laptop with a timeline. Then I called my cousin Petra. Petra is the family member I trust most. She is quiet, precise, and she has known Lena for 33 years. She also lives 3 blocks from Lena. I asked Petra if she had noticed anything unusual around the time of the engagement announcement. She was quiet for a moment, and then she said, I saw Lena at the coffee shop on September 29th. She was on her laptop for almost 2 hours. She seemed very focused. I asked her what she was working on, and she said it was wedding stuff. September 29th, the day after the report was filed, I asked Petra if she would be willing to tell me exactly what she saw, in writing, if it ever became necessary. She asked me why. I told her. There was a long silence on the phone, and then Petra said, I always thought something was off. I never wanted to say it. I know, I said. You do not have to say it now. Just remember what you saw. Over the next 2 weeks, I did several things quietly and without telling anyone except Marcus and our lawyer. First, I requested the full investigation file from the Child Welfare Office under the applicable disclosure provisions. The report had been submitted through the public portal. The submission metadata, which the office was required to retain, included a timestamp and an IP address. My lawyer filed a formal records request. Second, I asked Dr. Aurora to write an expanded letter of support for the adoption file, one that specifically addressed the false claims in the report. She did so. It was 4 pages long, and it was thorough. Third, I went back through the chat history between Lena and me and found 3 messages that were, in retrospect, extraordinary. One from 8 months ago, in which Lena had asked me, casually, whether I had ever been hospitalized for anything. I had said no. She had said, "Oh, I thought Mum mentioned something once." I had thought nothing of it at the time. I thought about it now. One from 6 months ago, in which she asked about our neighbourhood, specifically whether we had a homeowners association, in a way that now felt like she was building a profile, and one from a week before the report was filed, in which she had asked, with what I now recognise as deliberate casualness, whether Marcus and I ever argued about the adoption stress. I had told her yes, sometimes, like any couple going through something hard. She had used that. She had taken a normal human answer and filed it with a government agency as evidence of a volatile relationship. I sat with that for a while. I did not cry then either. I felt something clarify inside me, the way water clarifies when the sediment settles. The investigation moved forward. Marcus and I cooperated fully. We opened our home. We provided references. Dr. Aurora spoke directly with the investigator. Our neighbours, who had never once heard us argue loudly enough to be concerned, provided statements. Our lawyer was present for every formal interaction. Diane called me in late October to tell me that the investigation had found no credible basis for the report's claims and that our file would not be affected. She said it in her careful, professional voice, but at the end of the call she paused and said, "I hope you're okay. This kind of thing is very hard." "I am okay," I said. "I am actually very okay." The wedding was scheduled for November 12th. The brunch the morning before, on November 11th, was at my parents' house. Lena had organised it as a family gathering, a celebration of the day before the big day, approximately 30 people. My parents, both sets of grandparents, aunts and uncles, cousins, and Theo's family. A caterer had been hired. There were flowers everywhere. Lena was wearing a cream-coloured wrap dress, and she looked beautiful, and she was at the centre of everything, which was exactly where she had always wanted to be. I arrived with Marcus. I had a folder in my bag. I want to be honest about my state of mind that morning. I was not looking forward to what I was about to do. I take no pleasure in public scenes. I do not enjoy conflict. But I had thought carefully about the venue and the timing, and I had concluded that a private conversation would give Lena the opportunity to reframe, to deny, to perform her way out. She'd spent her entire life performing her way out of things. The people in that room were the people whose opinion she valued most. They were also the people who needed to know what she had done. My mother greeted me at the door with a hug and told me I looked tired. I said I had been sleeping fine. Lena was across the room, talking to Theo's mother. She saw me come in and she waved, bright and easy, and I waved back. We sat down to brunch. There was a moment about 40 minutes in, after the food had been served and the champagne had been poured and the room was warm and full, and everyone was in that particular good mood that comes with celebration. My father was about to give a toast. I said, "Before you do, Dad, can I say something?" He looked surprised. He sat down. The room quieted. I stood up. I had the folder in my hands. I said, "I want to start by saying that Marcus and I have some wonderful news. The investigation into our adoption file has been closed. The report that was filed against us was found to have no credible basis, and we expect to be matched with a child within the next few months." There was a ripple of response. My mother's hand went to her mouth. My aunt started to say something happy. I kept going. "I also want to talk about that report, because some of you may not know it existed. Someone filed an anonymous report with the Child Welfare Office on September 28th, claiming that I had a history of mental illness requiring hospitalization, that Marcus and I had a volatile relationship, and that our home was not a safe environment. All of it was false. All of it was designed to delay or derail our adoption at the most critical moment in the process. The room was very quiet now. Lena said, from across the table, "This is not the time or place for this." "I actually think it is," I said, "because the person who filed that report is in this room." She stood up. "You do not know that." "I do know that," I said. "The report was submitted through the public portal on September 28th. The submission metadata, obtained through a formal records request, includes an IP address. That IP address was traced to a residential account registered in your name, Lena." I placed the first document on the table. She stared at it. Her face did something complicated. "That is not proof of anything," she said. "Someone could have used my Wi-Fi." "You are right that an IP address alone is not conclusive," I said. "That is why I also have this." I placed the second document on the table. It was the printed chat history. I had highlighted 3 messages in yellow. "These are messages you sent me in the months before the report. You asked whether I had ever been hospitalized. You asked about our neighborhood. You asked whether Marcus and I argued about the adoption stress. The report uses language that mirrors these conversations almost exactly. The hospitalization claim, the neighborhood references, the relationship tension. You built the report from things I told you in confidence." Lena's voice had changed. It was still controlled, but the ease had gone out of it. "This is insane. You are doing this today, on my wedding eve. This is what you are doing." "I am doing this today," I said, "because you did what you did on September 28th. You chose the timing. I am just responding to it." I looked around the room. My mother was crying quietly. My father's expression was one I had never seen on him before. Theo was looking at Lena with an expression I could not fully read, but which was not the expression of a man who was surprised. "There is one more thing," I said. I placed the third document on the table. It was Petra's written account, the date, the coffee shop, the 2 hours on the laptop, the wedding stuff. Petra, who was sitting at the far end of the table, did not say anything. She did not need to. The document said it. Lena looked at Petra. Something broke open in her face. "You wrote that?" she said. Petra said quietly, "It is what I saw. You are my cousin. I am her cousin too." Lena turned back to me. The performance was gone. What was underneath it was something raw and small, and I realized genuinely frightened. She started. "You were getting everything. Everyone was talking about you and the adoption. And I was getting married and nobody cared, and I just wanted..." She stopped. She stopped herself because she heard it. We all heard it. My aunt said, very quietly, "Lena." That was all. Just her name. But the way my aunt said it carried 30 years of watching. Lena sat down. She did not say anything else for a long time. Theo put his hand on the table near hers, but not on it. My father poured himself more coffee. The room did not recover its celebration mood. It was not meant to. I sat down too. Marcus put his hand on my back. I picked up my coffee cup and I drank from it. And the coffee was still warm. I want to tell you what happened after, because the confrontation is only part of the story. The wedding happened on November 12th. I was not there. I had told my mother the week before that I would not be attending, not as punishment, but because I could not stand at the altar beside someone who had tried to take my family from me and pretend it was fine. My mother cried. She said she understood. She said she needed time. I told her to take all the time she needed. I heard later, through Petra, that the wedding was smaller in spirit than anyone had planned, that the brunch had changed something in the room that could not be changed back, that Theo's mother had asked Lena, quietly and privately, what had actually happened, that Lena had not had a good answer. Lena did not reach out to me for 6 weeks.
When she finally did, it was a text. It said, "I know what I did was wrong. I do not expect you to forgive me. I just needed you to know that I know." I read it. I did not reply immediately. I thought about it for 3 days. Then I wrote back, "Thank you for saying that. I am not ready to talk yet. I will let you know when I am." I have not let her know yet. That is not cruelty. It is honesty. Diane called me in December. She said the match committee had reviewed our file,
and that there was a child they wanted to discuss with us. A little girl, 2 years old, whose name I will not share here because she is not a story detail. She is a person. She is ours now, in the way that matters. I remember the morning we got the call confirming the match. I was in the kitchen again, same window, same autumn light, but it was December now, so the light was lower and colder and sharper. I had my coffee mug in both hands. Marcus was standing next to me, and he was crying, and I was not yet, and then I was. The coffee mug is yellow. It has a small chip on the handle that I have always meant to replace and never have. I have had it for 7 years. I held it that morning, and I thought about all the mornings I had stood in that kitchen, not knowing how the story would end. This is how it ended. Not with Lena destroyed, not with my family fixed, not with everything resolved and forgiven and wrapped up. Life does not work that way, and I would not trust a story that said it did. Lena lost something that day at the brunch. She lost the version of herself that everyone had agreed to believe in. She lost the narrative of the effortless, beloved sister, and the one who could do no wrong, because no one had ever held up the evidence and said, look, here is what she actually did. She lost the room. Not permanently, maybe. People forgive. People forget. But she lost it that day, and she knew it. And the people who had always given her the benefit of the doubt were no longer quite so quick to do so. She did not lose her marriage. She did not lose her family entirely. I did not want those things for her. I wanted her to be seen clearly by the people who mattered for what she had done. That happened. My mother and I have had many conversations since November, long ones. She has said things I needed to hear. She has also said things that were harder, about her own role in the dynamic, about the ways she had perhaps made competition feel like love when we were growing up, about the ways she had let Lena's charm be an excuse for her behaviour for decades. Those conversations are ongoing. They are not easy. They are real. There were professional consequences too, smaller but real. Theo's mother, who sits on the board of a community foundation where Lena had been hoping to land a volunteer leadership role, withdrew her informal endorsement after the brunch. Lena had spent months cultivating that connection. It was gone by December. I did not engineer that. It was simply what happens when the people who vouched for you watch you become someone they did not recognize. Marcus and I are building something now, a home that is genuinely ours, with people in it who understand that love is not a finite resource, and that someone else's joy does not diminish your own. Our daughter is learning to say words I cannot get enough of. She says the word more for everything she wants more of. More juice, more song, more story, more hug, more. Yes, that is exactly right. I kept the folder. It is in a box in our home office, along with the letter from Diane confirming the investigation was closed, and the expanded letter from Dr. Aurora, and the printed chat history with the 3 highlighted messages. I do not look at it often. I do not need to, but I know it is there. Some people ask me, when I tell this story, whether I regret doing it the way I did. The brunch, the public reveal, whether I should have confronted Lena privately first, given her a chance to explain. I think about that question seriously, and then I think about September 28th. I think about Lena sitting at that laptop in the coffee shop, building a case against me out of things I had told her in trust, filing it with a government agency, and then texting me a heart emoji. I think about her standing on that fitting platform, saying that some people are just not made for motherhood, saying it to the mirror so she did not have to look at me. She did not give me a private chance. She went straight to the institution that had the power to end my path to my daughter. She chose the arena. I just chose a different one. I do not think I was wrong. Here's what I know now, at 37, with a yellow coffee mug, with a chipped handle, and a daughter who asks for more of everything. Family is not the people who share your blood. Family is the people who understand that your happiness does not threaten theirs. The people who can sit in a room with your good news and feel it as good news, not as competition, not as a reminder of what they do not have, not as an opportunity to recalibrate the attention in the room. I am building my family with those people. I am done building it around the others. The little girl who is now my daughter has a way of falling asleep in the car that is the most peaceful thing I have ever seen. Her head tips to the side, her hands go loose, and she is just gone, just trusting, just completely at rest. I watch her in the rearview mirror sometimes, and I think about everything that had to happen, all of it, the grief and the paperwork and the anonymous report and the brunch and the folder and the IP address, and Petra's quiet voice saying, I am her cousin too, and I think all of it led here. I would do it again, every single part of it, because she is worth it, and because I was always worth fighting for, even when I was the only one who knew it.